He's a health researcher, a health mentor, the brains behind the Life Plan, and known as the Fast Master, Jason Sean Bennett. How are you today?
I'm very good, very good. Great to be on the show down there.
And as a man who spends his life focused on healthy living, I'm not surprised that you're feeling great today, Jason. Now, for those who aren't privy to your work, what is it exactly that you do?
Well, I've become a health researcher and an author just through curing my own illness, and we can get to that in a minute. But I basically teach people how to live a long, healthy life free of drugs and disease. And it's just through the last 25 years of my research, and people asking me to write books. I've now got a book out as well called Eat Less, Live Long, which is what this tour is all about. But that's what I do now. That's what I've dedicated my life to, is literally transforming the health of the country, because New Zealand is in an abysmal state of health, and we really need to do something about it.
For sure. Now, you started off life as a pretty unhealthy man yourself, but you managed to turn it around through your research.
I did indeed, yeah. I was born at 7 months. My mum had toxemia when I was in the womb, so I came out a very sick little baby. I ended up with asthma, with hay fever, with allergies, colds, flus, bugs, viruses. I was on 16 shots of Ventolin every day just to get through the day and be able to sleep. Steroid injections in and out of hospital. So I was very, very sick. Yeah. And I was told that it was genetic, that it was hereditary, nothing could be done, son, just get on with the drugs. And so I got to the age of 20 back in 1987, and I really decided to make a change and to see what I could do, to see if I could get rid of this, because I knew I wasn't going to be an effective father if I was having to take drugs just to get out of bed in the morning. So I started researching then, and I started looking at the centenarians. What are these longest, healthiest lived people in the world? What do they do that we don't do? And why is it that they regularly live into their 100s with low blood pressure, with no obesity, no diabetes, no cancers? And why is it that we're all getting high blood pressure in our 40s, and why are we falling apart in our 70s, So I started researching that and researching fasting and things, and over about 4 years I cured everything wrong with me. And now at 46, I'm in better shape than I was in my 30s or 20s. I haven't been sick for 20 years. I haven't had a cold for 20 years. I never get run down. I never get sick at all. And I don't take any drugs. I haven't done for 20 years, no medication. And it's all purely down to changing my diet, my lifestyle, and my environment.
That's absolutely incredible. The proof is certainly in the pudding there, Jason. I want to touch on that nickname for a moment, though, the Fast Master. You're not an Olympic sprinter. You're not a race car driver. Where does that come from?
Well, it's just a nickname people started talking to me about because I've been regularly, intelligently fasting for over 25 years. So I've been doing this for a long time. And there's a lot of trendy fasting diets now that come and go. However, I teach what I call regular intelligent fasting, which is all about eating a healthy, high-fiber, low-calorie, plant-based whole food diet, which is what we've all evolved on as human beings, and then occasionally taking the day off, because throughout history, there was always been famine. There's always been famine. Up until the Second World War, there was regularly periods of time when there wasn't enough food. So what we had to learn to do as humans was store the fuel in the body and then have it available for when there was no food. And of course, what the human body does really well is storing fuel. What it doesn't do well is an abundance of food. And that's the challenge we've got. So what we've got now is the challenge of too much food and too much of the wrong sort of food. And when you look at those two problems together, you get real trouble. So I teach people how to go back to a period where once a day they just take the day off food, they fast intelligently, they do it regularly once a week, and miracles happen as part of a healthy plant-based whole food lifestyle.
Absolutely. Having been to one of your seminars before there, Jason, centered around regular intelligent fasting, and certainly attest to the quality of it. Now, this is a focal point of your new book, which we'll get to shortly, and something you have conducted whole seminars about before. For the people who say, and I'm sure you hear this quite often, well, that's just starving yourself, isn't it? What do you say to them?
Yes, well, there's a real different distinction between starvation and fasting. Starvation is when the body has no fuel, so you've got no glycogen stored, no protein stored, no body fat stored, and then you stop eating. Now, I don't recommend that. And of the thousands of people I've worked with all over the world, I've had 4 people so far in the Life Plan who I've said to, look, fasting's not appropriate for you because you don't have any stored fuel. So, firstly, the distinction of starvation is completely different to fasting. That's when you've got no body fat. And every seminar I do, I say anyone in the room without any body fat, and there's not one hand goes up. And any Kiwi I've met in 15 years has no body fat. So the difference between starving and fasting is that fasting is when the body turns, when there's no fuel coming in the mouth, and it turns onto those fuel stores in the body and starts eating that. And that's when you eat the dead, diseased, dying and decaying cells, so the fat cells and the waste cells and things like that the body doesn't need but stores as fuel. So there's a distinct difference between the two.
Now, your new book is out now, Jason, Eat Less, Live Long, and this has been a real labour of love for you, hasn't it?
Oh, it has. I've been writing it for 8 years, and I've basically written actually 10 books in the last 8 years.
Wow.
And this is the first of 10, yeah, because I've got so much stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, we could talk about genetic expression and breast cancer and all kinds of different things. So what I found was that the one topic that most people were fascinated with more than anything was what I did and what is fasting. And so that's why I've made this book about, well, what I did to get well, how do you eat less, and what do we mean by eating less, and what about starvation versus fasting, and all those kind of things. And also a very heavy focus on the centenarians. So these are the groups of people like the Vilcabumbas, the Abkhazians, the Okinawans, the Ikarans, all these different people around the world who regularly live into their 100s at a rate 10 times more people than we do. And it's nothing to do with genetics, as scientifically measured by the people studying them. And it's nothing to do with anything apart from their diet, lifestyle, and environment. So these are people that are incredibly inspirational because they're walking around in their 90s and 100s. They look like they're 60 or 70. And there's no drugs and there's no disease. And it's nothing to do with genetics. So when you start looking at that, it's fascinating stuff because you go, wow, if we make these small changes, we can have the same kind of health that they do.
With about 10 books written but only one published, you've obviously devoted a lot of time and effort into your research, Jason. But if you were to scale it down to 30 seconds, What would you say the top 3 tips for healthy living are? The
top three tips in 30 seconds. Okay, number 1 would be eat a plant-based whole food diet. So when you look at the centenarians, they're eating 96% plant material. So your fruits, your vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and nuts and seeds.
Mm-hmm.
So that nice there. So a high fiber plant-based diet would be number 1. Obviously balanced and intelligent, and a little bit of fish if you like occasionally. Number 2 would be a regular routine. So a wake time, a sleep time, meal time, and exercise time.
Mm-hmm.
So a regular routine. And thirdly would be to lower your stress and make sure you're getting enough sleep and relaxation. So impacting your diet, making smart choices with what you're eating, having a routine in your life, and making sure you've got exercise and rhythm in your day.
All right.
And those 3 things alone will make a huge difference.
Thank you. I'm going to make a wee list of that and put it on the wall.
Good man.
Now, Jason, a lot of your studies do focus around centenarians, which you've touched on a couple of times. That's people that live to 100. Just between you and I, how do you reckon you're going to make it to?
I've never been asked that question before. I have no idea, actually. I'm shooting for 100. I certainly want to be around to watch my great-great-grandkids get married. And, you know, I was lucky. I've got a step-grandmother who made 104. And
wow.
She, at age 23 in 1930, she decided to stop eating animal products and processed food. And she lived another 81 years without drugs or disease, right up to 104 with no problem at all. And she's the only person I've met in the family who's done that. And she's a walking example of what that kind of difference makes.
That's incredible. And Jason, just want to end on an old chestnut. They say you're only as old as you feel. How old do you feel?
Well, I feel mid-20s, I guess, is how I'd describe how I feel.
Jason Schoenbennett, lovely to catch up with you and look forward to chatting again soon, eh?